Poor nurse spent her last $5 to buy a drink. Unaware, her blind date was the cafe's CEO. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The soft hum of conversation mixed with the faint clinking of cups and spoons filled the warm air of Haven Brew Café in downtown Seattle. Golden lights shimmered through the rain-streaked windows, turning every drop outside into glitter. At a corner table, a young nurse named Lily Tran stood frozen for a second, clutching her worn leather purse. Her uniform jacket smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee, a scent that had followed her since her last night's shift at St. Mary's Hospital. She reached into her wallet and unfolded a single, crumpled, $5 bill. It was all she had left, after paying for her mother's medicine and bus fare. But she had promised her best friend she would show up to this blind date, no matter what. At least treat yourself to a coffee, Lily, her friend had said. So here she was, heart pounding, palms damp, praying the man she was supposed to meet would not notice how tired she looked. She scanned the cafe. Every table seemed filled with people who belonged: students, typing, couples laughing, business partners in sleek suits. And then she saw him. A man sitting alone near the window, tall, neat, focused on a tablet filled with cafe blueprints. His sleeves were rolled up, his dark hair slightly messy, his eyes calm but distant. He looked kind. Ordinary, maybe. That had to be him. Lily took a deep breath, adjusted the strap of her bag, and walked over. "Hi," she said softly, her voice almost trembling. "You must be Ethan. I am Lily. Sorry if I am late." The man looked up, surprised. For a brief second, he seemed about to correct her, then paused. A gentle smile appeared on his lips. "No worries. You are right on time." Lily exhaled, relieved, and sat down. "Blind dates are strange, right? I was not even sure you would come." "Oh," he chuckled, the sound low and easy. "They are something else, that is for sure." Lily smiled, her nerves slowly unwinding. She ordered the smallest latte on the menu, sliding her last $5 bill across the counter before returning to the table. The cup warmed her hands as she spoke about the hospital, about the patients who never said thank you but stayed alive because of her steady hands. He listened quietly, watching her eyes come alive when she talked about caring for people. "You must love your work," he said. "I do," Lily answered. "It is hard, but it matters. I guess I like feeling useful. Though sometimes, I dream of opening a tiny cafe one day. A place where people can rest and breathe, you know?" She laughed, embarrassed. "Sorry, that sounds silly." He shook his head. Not silly at all. For the first time in months, she forgot her exhaustion. The cafe lights softened, the chatter blurred, and it felt almost like the world had paused for her. She did not know that the man sitting across from her, quiet, amused, listening to every word, was Adrian Cole, the founder and chief executive officer of Haven Brew Café itself. He studied her calloused hands wrapped around the paper cup, the way her eyes glowed when she spoke of kindness, and something inside him stirred. For once, someone was talking to him without seeing a title, a company, or a fortune, just a man drinking coffee in the rain. Lily glanced at the clock and frowned. "I should go soon. My shift starts in an hour." He nodded, not trusting his voice. As she gathered her things, her phone buzzed. A message popped up. "Hey Lily, I am at Haven Brew, table 6. Can you find me? Ethan." Her smile froze. Slowly, she looked up at the man across from her. "Wait, you are not Ethan, are you?" He hesitated, guilt flickering across his face. "No," he said softly. "Oh my God," she whispered, her cheeks flushing. "I am so sorry. I must have sat at the wrong table." She stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her cup. "I did not mean to bother you." "Lily, it is okay," he started, but she was already backing away. She hurried out into the drizzle, heart pounding, her face burning. Behind the glass, Adrian watched her run across the street, the cafe door still swinging. For a long moment, he just sat there, staring at the empty chair opposite him, feeling something unexpected regret. He had spent years surrounded by people who spoke to him for his name, his money, his influence. But for those few minutes, that stranger with tired eyes and $5 to her name had made him feel human again. Lily hurried through the rain, her shoes splashing against shallow puddles on the sidewalk. The night air smelled like wet asphalt, and roasted beans drifting from the cafe behind her. She pressed a hand to her chest, embarrassed and angry at herself. The man had not been Ethan, and she had just poured her heart out to a stranger. The $5 she had spent felt heavier now, like a reminder that even simple mistakes had a price. Her apartment sat above a small laundromat a few blocks from St. Mary's Hospital. The building groaned with the sound of washing machines and the hum of old pipes. When she pushed open the door, her mother was asleep on the couch, oxygen tubes tracing delicate lines across her face. A half-empty pill bottle sat beside a glass of water. Lily hung her damp jacket and stood for a moment, listening to the faint rhythm of her mother's breathing. That sound always calmed her. Then her phone buzzed again, a message from her best friend, Emily. How was the blind date? Was he cute? Lily sighed, sinking onto the edge of the couch. Wrong table, she murmured under her breath. She typed back. Long story. I will tell you tomorrow. She set the phone aside and stared at the ceiling, the muffled rain still tapping the windows. Her reflection in the dark glass looked older than 27 eyes, shadowed, hair falling loose, a face shaped by exhaustion and quiet hope. Morning came before she even realized she had fallen asleep. Her alarm buzzed at 6, the familiar ringtone she could not afford to hate. She moved quietly through the small kitchen, boiling water for instant coffee, tearing open a single slice of bread. The bills on the counter seemed to multiply overnight. Hospital invoices, rent, electricity, medication refills. She traced one fingertip down the page, whispering the numbers out loud as if speaking them could make them smaller. By 7, she was back at St. Mary's Hospital. The corridors smelled of antiseptic and tired dreams. Nurses passed in quick steps, their scrubs rustling like soft waves. Lily tied her hair into a bun, pinned her badge to her chest, Lily Tran, registered nurse, and slipped into the rhythm of the ward. Her first patient of the morning was Mr. Collins, a retired carpenter recovering from surgery. He grumbled about the hospital food, as always. Lily smiled, checking his IV line. If you behave, I might sneak you a muffin later, she teased. He laughed, and the sound reminded her why she stayed in this job despite the long hours and low pay. During a short break, she sat by the window of the staff lounge, watching gray clouds drift past the hospital roof. Her fingers still smelled faintly of coffee from the night before. She could not stop replaying that conversation, the stranger's calm voice, the way he had listened without judgment. He had looked at her like she was more than a tired nurse counting coins. She shook the thought away. He was just a kind stranger, nothing more. At lunch, Emily burst into the lounge, carrying 2 sandwiches. So, tell me everything. Was he handsome? Did you two hit it off? Lily laughed softly. You will not believe it. I sat with the wrong man. What? Emily gasped. You mean you just talked to a random stranger for an hour? Pretty much. Emily burst into laughter so loud a doctor turned to look. Only you, Lily. Only you would pour your heart out to the wrong guy and still call it polite conversation. Oh, quote. Lily tried to laugh too, but a flicker of something, curiosity, maybe regret, lingered inside her. He was nice though, gentle, maybe too quiet. But when I left, he looked sad. Emily grinned. Then maybe fate wanted you to meet him instead of Ethan. Lily rolled her eyes. Fate needs better timing. That evening, when she returned home, the sunset painted the walls with amber light. Her mother was awake this time, sitting up with a blanket over her knees. How was your day, sweetheart? She asked in a faint voice. Long but good, Lily said, crouching beside her. She tucked the blanket around her mother's shoulders. I met someone kind yesterday. Not in the way you think, just someone who reminded me that people can still listen. Her mother smiled weakly. Then that sounds like someone worth remembering. Later, after helping her mother to bed, Lily opened her notebook, the one where she wrote down fragments of her dreams between shifts. On the first page, she had drawn a tiny coffee cup and written "Healing Cup" above it. Beneath, she added a new line, "Kindness is never wasted, even on strangers." The words made her smile. Somewhere across the city, in a tall building with lights glowing through the rain, Adrian Cole stood by his office window, thinking of the woman who had walked into his cafe by mistake. He could still hear her voice when she said, "I dream of a place where people can rest." No, he did not know her story, not yet. But he knew he wanted to. The next evening, the rain had stopped, but the air still held the chill of early spring. Lily walked down the long corridor of St. Mary's Hospital, her shoes squeaking softly on the polished floor. The shift had been heavy, 2 emergency admissions, 1 patient lost, another barely hanging on. Her body ached, but her mind refused to slow down. When she finally sat in the break room, the clock showed 10:30. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened her small lunchbox. Inside was a half sandwich and a folded napkin with her mother's handwriting. "Eat, even if you are tired." She smiled faintly and took a bite, chewing slowly, staring at the vending machine across the room. Next to her lay a small notebook, her sketchbook of dreams. It was old, the edges curled from years of being stuffed into pockets and bags. On one page was a rough pencil drawing of a cafe counter with the sign "Healing Cup." She had drawn it months ago on another long night, imagining a place where tired souls could stop, breathe, and feel seen. She turned the page, adding a new sketch. A nurse's badge, with a tiny crack through the plastic. Her badge lay beside her now, cracked exactly the same way after falling on the hospital floor earlier that day. She traced the line with her finger, whispering, "Still holding together." The words came out half as a joke, half as a promise. Meanwhile, across the city, in the upper floor of Haven Brew headquarters, Adrian Cole stared at his screen. His assistant had just sent him the next month's charity outreach schedule, hospital visits, free coffee drives, and community care events. One name caught his eye: St. Mary's Hospital Partnership pending approval. His heart gave a small jolt. The same hospital she had mentioned. He hesitated, then typed a quick message to the outreach director. "Approve it. I will handle the visit personally." Back at St. Mary's, Lily's break ended. She stood up, straightened her scrubs, and tucked her notebook back into her bag. As she walked down the corridor, she passed a new poster, pinned to the staff board. Haven Brew Foundation. Free coffee for healthcare heroes. Coming next week. Her eyes widened, and for a second she laughed softly. "What a coincidence," she murmured. The cafe that had seen her most embarrassing mistake was about to show up at her workplace. A few days later, the hospital lobby filled with the warm scent of roasted beans and vanilla. The event had begun early, with volunteers setting up a booth bearing the familiar Haven Brew logo. Nurses and doctors lined up for free drinks, grateful for a taste of comfort in the middle of their shifts. Lily was finishing paperwork when one of the volunteers approached her. "Ma'am, would you like a latte or a cappuccino, courtesy of Haven Brew?" She turned and froze. Behind the counter, wearing a simple black apron, stood the man she had mistaken for Ethan, Adrian Cole. His sleeves were rolled up again, a familiar smile tugging at his lips. For a heartbeat, she could not move. He noticed her instantly. "Lily," he said softly, as if the word itself mattered. "Long time no see." Her voice caught in her throat. "You are here, at my hospital." I heard St. Mary's could use some good coffee," he said lightly. "I wanted to make sure it reached the right hands." A blush crept across her cheeks. "You really run this place?" "I help," he replied, eyes glinting. "You could say I am involved in the brewing process." She laughed despite herself. "I cannot believe I called you Ethan." He shrugged. "I did not mind. It was the best mistaken identity I have ever had." They talked for a few minutes, long enough for her to forget the noise of the busy lobby. When she turned to leave, he gently slid a small cup across the counter. On its cardboard sleeve, he had written in neat handwriting, "To the nurse with $5 and a dream, keep believing." Her fingers trembled slightly as she took it. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, after her shift, Lily returned home with the cup carefully saved in her bag. She placed it next to her notebook, tracing the words again and again until the ink smudged faintly under her thumb. She did not know what the message meant. Was it a joke, a kindness, or something more? but it made her feel seen in a way she had not felt in years. Across the city, Adrian leaned on the balcony of his office, looking down at the lights scattered across the streets. He thought of the nurse with the tired eyes and steady hands, and of the way she had smiled when she talked about kindness. For the first time in a long while, the world outside his empire of coffee shops felt human again. And somewhere in her small apartment, Lily fell asleep at her desk, the cracked nurse badge resting on her notebook, and the scent of coffee lingering in the room like a quiet promise. The week that followed moved like a quiet rhythm, days of hospital shifts, nights filled with the soft hum of rain, and the faint aroma of coffee that now reminded Lily of him. Every morning when she walked past the poster of Haven Brew in the hospital corridor, her heart gave a small, uninvited flutter. She told herself it was nothing, just coincidence, just gratitude. On Friday evening, she was leaving St. Mary's Hospital when she saw him again. Adrian was standing by a small coffee truck parked outside the hospital entrance, serving free drinks to the night shift staff. He looked up, recognized her instantly, and smiled. "You again," he said warmly. "You work too much, Lily Tran." She blushed, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Says the man running a coffee empire but still pouring lattes himself." He laughed softly, handing her a cup. "Touché. But this one is on me. I promise it is not the wrong order this time." She accepted it, the warmth seeping into her cold fingers. "You should not be here so late. People like you have assistants for this." He leaned against the truck and watched the rain beginning to fall again, a thin mist glowing under the streetlight. "Sometimes it is nice to remember why we started something. Coffee tastes different when you hand it to someone who needs it." They stood in silence for a moment, the sound of rain filling the pause. Then she asked quietly, "Why do I feel like I have met you before that night?" Adrian hesitated, then smiled. "Maybe fate ran ahead of us." Her laugh was soft, genuine. Fate has a strange sense of humor. As the drizzle turned heavier, he pulled off his coat and draped it around her shoulders without a word. The fabric smelled faintly of cedar and coffee beans. She tried to protest, but he shook his head. "Keep it until the rain stops." Her cheeks flushed with a warmth she could not name. "Thank you, Adrian. You remembered my name this time," he teased. "I do not forget kindness," she replied. They spent the next hour talking beneath the awning of the coffee truck. He told her about his travels when opening new branches, the people he met, the lessons learned from failures that money could not fix. She told him about the hospital, her mother's fragile heart, and the weight of wanting to help everyone, even when she was running on empty. At one point, she said quietly, "I used to think rich people never understood exhaustion or fear." He looked down at his cup, rain tapping softly against the metal truck. "You would be surprised how lonely success can feel. Everyone wants something from you, but no one just talks to you." Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, a quiet recognition of two lives on opposite sides of a glass wall. When the rain finally stopped, she realized she had been smiling for the first time in weeks. "I should go," she said softly. "My mother will worry." He nodded, but before she turned to leave, he took out a small paper sleeve and scribbled something on it with a pen from his pocket. When she looked down, the words read, "Come back when you are not tired. Haven Brew, corner of 5th and Pine." She looked up, confused, but he had already started cleaning up the stand. She wanted to say something, to ask what he meant, but the words would not come. Instead, she walked away, clutching the sleeve in her hand. As she reached the end of the street, she glanced back. He was still there under the dim light, watching her leave, the same way he had watched her the night she ran out of his café. And though neither of them said it aloud, both knew that something had shifted. What began as a mistake was quietly becoming something that felt a lot like hope. The next few weeks passed in a blur of hospital shifts and quiet moments that felt strangely brighter than before. Every few days, Adrian appeared at St. Mary's Hospital with his coffee truck, or walked through the lobby carrying boxes of pastries for the nurses. The staff adored him, calling him the coffee man with kind eyes. To Lily, though, he was still the stranger from the wrong table, except now. He had somehow become a part of her routine. One evening, she found him sitting on a bench outside the hospital garden, sipping a cup of black coffee while reading something on his tablet. She hesitated, then walked over. You are working even now? He looked up, smiling. You are one to talk. Do nurses ever stop moving? Only when the coffee man forces them to sit, she teased, sitting beside him. The bench was damp from the rain earlier that day, but she did not mind. The scent of wet grass mixed with roasted beans wrapped around them like a soft blanket. He handed her a cup without a word. She took it, noticing her name written on the sleeve in neat handwriting. You remembered how I like it, she said, surprised. I remember details, he said, especially about people who make the world a little better. Her face warmed, and she looked away. You make it sound like I am some kind of hero. I am just doing my job. Oh, maybe, he said quietly, but you do it with heart. That is what matters. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lily spoke softly. Sometimes I wonder what I would be doing if my father had not passed away. He wanted me to open a small place for people who needed rest. A place like the healing cup I told you about. Adrian listened, his expression thoughtful. You still can, Lily. She laughed lightly. Dreams do not pay rent. Maybe not, he replied, but dreams are what make people work harder. She turned to him, half smiling, half curious. You talk like someone who has already made his dream come true. He hesitated, looking at the coffee cup in his hands. In some ways, yes. But sometimes, when you build something too big, you forget why you started it. Lately, I have been trying to remember. That night, before heading home, Lily walked past the Haven Brew truck one last time. She noticed a small drawing taped near the counter, a rough pencil sketch of a steaming cup with a cracked nurse badge beside it. Underneath was written, Healing begins with kindness. She froze, recognizing her own words. The next morning, Adrian stopped by the hospital cafeteria. Can I steal you for a lunch break? He asked. Lily blinked, surprised. Me? Yes, you. I owe you for all the coffee you let go cold during your shifts. They ended up at a small park across from the hospital, sitting under a maple tree with sandwiches from the vending machine. She told him about her mother's health, her long nights, her fears of not being enough. He listened the way few people ever did. When she apologized for talking too much, he smiled gently. Please, do not apologize for being real. By the time the sun began to set, the air between them felt softer, lighter. It was no longer the awkward silence of strangers, but the quiet understanding of two people who had started to care. As she stood to leave, he reached into his coat pocket and handed her a folded napkin. For your notebook, he said. She unfolded it later that night. Inside, written in his careful handwriting, were 6 simple words. Your dream deserves to exist. 2. She closed her eyes, holding the napkin to her chest. Somewhere deep inside, something that had been asleep for years, finally began to stir. 2 weeks later, St. Mary's Hospital was alive with celebration. The lobby had been transformed with flowers and golden banners that read, Coffee for Care, Haven Brew Foundation. The air smelled of roasted beans and vanilla. Lily was part of the volunteer team, checking supplies and helping patients find their seats for the small appreciation ceremony. She had no idea her quiet routine was about to shatter. The crowd clapped as the host took the stage. Please welcome our special guest, the announcer said brightly. The founder and chief executive officer of Haven Brew Café, Mr. Adrian Cole. The words hit her like a shock of cold air. Her pen slipped from her hand. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. But then she saw him walking up to the microphone in a tailored suit, the same gentle smile on his face. He looked every bit. The man she could never have imagined, the name printed on coffee cups across the city, the face on business magazines. The man who had stood beside her in the rain, who had poured coffee for nurses and talked about kindness, was not just a kind stranger. He was the owner of it all. Lily stood frozen as the audience applauded. Adrian began his speech, his voice steady, rich, and sincere. St. Mary's Hospital holds a special place in our hearts, he said. The nurses and doctors here remind us that compassion is not just a word, it is an action. His gaze swept over the crowd, and then it found her. For a second, the world narrowed until there was only the two of them. He smiled faintly, but she could not return it. Her heart pounded so loud she could barely hear the rest of his words. She slipped out of the room quietly, her footsteps echoing against the marble floor. The sunlight spilling through the glass ceiling felt harsh, unreal. How could she have been so foolish? After the event, she stood outside near the hospital garden, trying to calm herself. The sound of footsteps approached, slow and familiar. "Lily?" His voice came, low and careful. She turned, her eyes flashing. "So it was all true," she said, her voice trembling. "You own Haven Brew. You are that Adrian Cole." He nodded slowly. "I should have told you." "You think?" she said, a bitter laugh breaking from her throat. "You let me talk about my $5 mistake while you own a chain worth millions. Do you have any idea how humiliating this feels?" He stepped closer, regret written across his face. "Lily, please. I did not mean to deceive you. I just wanted someone to talk to, someone who did not see me as a brand or a wallet. You did that for me." Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "So what was I then? A project? A charity case?" "No," he said quickly. "You were the first person who made me feel human again." But she shook her head. "You should have trusted me enough to tell me the truth." Before he could speak again, she turned and walked away, her steps fast, her chest tight. The cracked nurse badge clipped to her pocket swung with each step, catching the light like a small wound. Adrian stood there, helpless, watching her disappear into the hospital doors. Around him, people still celebrated, laughing and clinking cups, unaware that somewhere between the smell of coffee and applause, something pure had just broken. That night, Lily sat in her apartment, staring at the empty cup sleeve he had once written on. The words, "To the nurse, with $5, and a dream," blurred as her tears fell. She tore the sleeve in half, then pressed it against her heart, whispering to the silence, "Dreams are not meant to hurt like this." "Oh?" For days after the event, Lily moved through life as if underwater. The hospital halls felt longer, the air heavier. Her colleagues noticed her quietness, but she brushed off their questions with tired smiles. She told herself it was just another heartbreak, just another disappointment. But deep down, it was different. She had trusted him, and for the first time in years, she had let herself hope. Everywhere she went, Haven Brew seemed to follow her. The coffee truck outside the hospital disappeared. The familiar smell of their beans made her stomach twist. She started bringing her own tea, but even that did not keep the memories away. The rain, his coat around her shoulders, his voice when he said, "You talk to me like a person." One evening, after another 12-hour shift, she sat by her mother's bedside. The older woman was knitting slowly, her hands trembling. "You look troubled," her mother said gently. "Did something happen?" Lily hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I met someone. He was kind, but he was not who I thought he was." Her mother looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, "People wear masks for many reasons, Lily. Sometimes it is fear, not deceit." Lily swallowed hard. "Maybe. But he had everything, Mom. Money, fame, success. Why would someone like that pretend to be ordinary?" "Because maybe being ordinary is the only way he could be seen," her mother said. "You saw him without his title. That is rare. Do not punish yourself for believing in something good." That night, Lily could not sleep. She sat by the window, watching the city lights blur through the rain. The small notebook lay open on her lap. The words "healing cup" stared back at her. Slowly, she reached for the torn coffee sleeve she had kept. With careful fingers, she taped the two halves together again. The ink was faded, but the message still read, "To the nurse with $5 and a dream." A tear slid down her cheek. "Maybe kindness should not depend on who people are," she whispered. Across the city, Adrian sat alone in his office. The noise of the world hummed beyond the glass, but inside, silence pressed against him. He had spent the last few days drafting messages he never sent. Every time he tried to call, he deleted the number again. He did not blame her for leaving. He had hidden the truth, and she had every right to walk away. His assistant knocked gently on the door. "Sir, the project for the hospital partnership, should we cancel it?" Adrian stared at the documents on his desk. The plan had been to fund a new nurse wellness center at St. Mary's Hospital, a project inspired by her words about exhaustion and healing. His hand tightened around the pen. "No," he said quietly. "Finish it, but do not use my name." Later that week, Lily walked into the hospital and saw a notice pinned to the bulletin board. Funding approved. Healing Room Project. Dedicated to the staff who heal others every day. No company logo, no sponsor name. But the design sketch at the bottom, a steaming cup beside a cracked nurse badge, made her heart stop. She touched the paper with trembling fingers. "Adrian," she whispered. That night, she sat in the break room, staring at the glowing city beyond the window. The anger that had filled her for days began to fade, replaced by something softer. Maybe what her mother said was true. Maybe he had not lied to manipulate her. Maybe he had just wanted to be seen. She closed her eyes and whispered into the quiet, "I saw you, Adrian. I really did." And for the first time since that night, she felt something inside her begin to heal. A month passed before Lily heard his name again. The hospital's new healing room was finally complete, a quiet space filled with plants, warm lighting, and the smell of coffee that reminded her of comfort rather than pain. When she stepped inside for the first time, she saw a small plaque on the wall. It read, "For those who heal others, even when they are breaking." Her eyes filled with tears. Beneath the plaque, on a small table, sat her old cracked nurse badge framed and polished. Someone had found it and turned it into a symbol of strength. She knew immediately who had done it. The next morning, she went to Haven Brew Café, the original branch on 5th and Pine. The place buzzed with life, the scent of roasted beans wrapping around her like memory. Adrian stood behind the counter, speaking with a manager, his sleeves rolled up as always. When he turned and saw her, his voice faltered. "Lily," he said softly. She met his gaze, her heart steady this time. "You did not have to do all that." He shook his head. "I wanted to. You reminded me what Haven Brew was meant to be, about kindness, not profit." She stepped closer. "You did not sign your name on the project. It was not about me," he said. "It was about you. About everyone who keeps this city alive." Silence stretched between them, thick with everything left unsaid. Then she smiled faintly. "You still owe me a coffee, remember?" He blinked, surprised, then smiled back. "I kept that $5 bill," he said. "It is framed in my office. It reminded me that the best things start small." Lily looked down, laughing softly. "Then maybe it is time we start over. No secrets this time." Adrian nodded, his eyes warm. No secrets. As he handed her a cup, their fingers brushed. The warmth spread through her like sunrise. For the first time, she tasted peace instead of bitterness. Outside, rain began to fall again, but this time, it felt like a blessing, not a storm. 1 year later, the sign outside the small cafe on 5th and Pine read "Healing Cup" by Haven Brew. The once empty space now glowed with amber lights and laughter. Nurses, students, and workers filled the tables, sipping coffee and sharing quiet conversations after long days. The walls were lined with framed sketches donated by customers, each one a reminder that healing came in many forms. Behind the counter, Lily moved with practiced grace, her hair tied up, her hands steady. She poured milk into a cup, drawing a small heart in the foam before placing it on the counter. The customer smiled, thanked her, and left a note in the tip jar that read, "Your kindness tastes better than the coffee." She smiled and turned to see Adrian stepping through the door, carrying a bouquet of white tulips. He still wore his usual rolled sleeves, but now his presence no longer felt like something from a world beyond hers. He belonged here. "Busy day?" he asked, setting the flowers on the counter. "The best kind," she said. "People come here to breathe. I think my father would have liked this." Adrian nodded, his eyes soft. "He would be proud. You built something that matters." She looked around the cafe, the place that had once existed only in her notebook. "We built it," she corrected. He smiled, then reached into his coat pocket. "I brought something for you." From a small velvet box, he took out a delicate silver pendant, shaped like a coffee cup, engraved with the words, "Healing begins with kindness." Lily's breath caught. "Adrian," he took her hand gently, "you gave me a reason to remember why I started all of this. You reminded me that success without compassion is just noise. I do not want noise anymore. I want this. I want us." Tears filled her eyes, but she laughed softly. "You are proposing in a cafe, surrounded by milk foam and tired nurses." He grinned. That is our story, is it not? Real, messy, honest, the best mistake we ever made. She wiped her eyes and nodded. Yes, the best mistake. Applause broke out from the customers who had been pretending not to listen. Adrian slipped the pendant around her neck and kissed her forehead as everyone cheered. Later that evening, after the crowd had gone and the lights were dimmed, Lily sat at the corner table, the same table where she had once mistaken him for another man. On the wall above hung the framed $5 bill, now sealed behind glass. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "One cup, one chance, one act of kindness." Adrian joined her, 2 steaming cups in his hands. "You know," he said with a smile, "every branch of Haven Brew now donates a portion of profits to nursing scholarships, all because of a nurse who believed in kindness." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then let us make sure that kindness never runs out." Outside, the rain began to fall again, tapping gently against the window. The city lights reflected off the puddles like liquid gold. Inside, the two of them sat in the quiet glow of the cafe, their hands intertwined, hearts steady, surrounded by the soft hum of warmth and second chances. And as the camera of life pulled away, the sign above the window shimmered under the rain. Healing cup founded by a nurse, and a man who learned to be human again.